They didn't raise their voice. They didn't slam a door. But something inside you shifted. A slow ache, a quiet shrinking. And the worst part? You blamed yourself. Because it didn't look like abuse. It looked like love, like family, like someone who said, "I care," right before crossing your boundary again. But here's what the Stoics knew long before us. What you allow, you teach. And love without respect? That's not love. That's quiet control. In this episode, we'll explore 5 subtle yet destructive behaviors you should never tolerate, not from a stranger, not from a boss, and not even from your own family. Because your peace was never meant to be negotiable. Part 1. Constant criticism. It doesn't always begin with yelling. Sometimes it starts with a sigh. That again? You sure that's what you want to wear? Why do you always do it that way? Not loud, not cruel, but constant. One comment here, another tomorrow, then another next week. Until you find yourself pausing before you speak, filtering your words in real time. Not because you're unsure, but because someone has quietly taught you that you're always slightly wrong. This isn't feedback, this is erosion. And it happens so slowly, you don't notice until your confidence has faded. Until you hear your own voice, and it no longer sounds like yours. There's a line between guidance and control. True feedback builds, it's rooted in care. But constant criticism targets your identity, not your actions. It doesn't sharpen you, it shrinks you. In families, it hides inside comparisons. Your cousin already bought a house. Your sister never talks back. In relationships, it comes wrapped in sarcasm. Relax, I'm just being honest. You're too sensitive. At work, it's perfectionism dressed as mentorship. Good job, but maybe next time don't. Still, I wish you were more like. And here's the trap. The more it happens, the more you normalize it. You stop fighting the discomfort. You edit yourself just to survive the relationship. And bit by bit, you disappear. But Stoicism teaches us this. What you allow, you reinforce. What you tolerate, you become complicit in. As Epictetus said, no one can harm you without your consent. And that includes those who chip away at your worth using kind tones and cold hearts. If your dignity feels smaller after every interaction, if your posture tightens and your soul feels heavy, you are not overreacting, you are recognizing truth. Your body remembers what your mind tries to excuse. You don't need to scream. You don't need to justify your hurt to those who never intended to understand it. You just need one sentence, calm, clear, true. That felt like criticism, not care. Say it once, then step back and see who meets you with respect and who only knew how to engage through control. Because sometimes, the most powerful boundary begins with the courage to speak one honest sentence and the wisdom to let silence do the rest. Part 2. Boundary violations. It often begins with something small. A phone call late at night that you didn't ask for. An opinion about your life you never invited. Pry as invasion of your space, your energy, your time. You brush it off, you tell yourself it's no big deal. But something inside you whispers, this isn't right. You silence that voice because it's your parent, your sibling, someone who says they love you. But love without respect is not love. It's possession in disguise. True love honors space. It recognizes where you end and someone else begins. But when someone crosses that line over and over again, they're not connecting with you. They're managing you. I once knew a man whose mother had a spare key to his house. She would show up unannounced, move his furniture, comment on his groceries, and even open his mail. And when he finally asked her to call before visiting, she laughed. "I'm your mother," she said. "I don't need permission." That sentence haunted him, not because it was loud, but because it revealed everything. She didn't see him as his own person. She saw him as an extension of herself. This is how boundary violations often look. Not violent, not overt, but constant quiet signals that say, "What matters to you doesn't matter to me." And the longer you allow it, the more you forget that your time, your energy, your life are yours. Some people cross boundaries because they were never taught what they are. They were raised in homes where love meant control and privacy meant distance. To them, access equals affection. But others, they know exactly what they're doing. They don't charge through your limits, they test them. They lean in just enough. They apologize just enough. And when you finally say no, they say, "Wow, you've changed." But what they really mean is, "You stopped letting me control you." That's not loss. That's liberation. Stoicism teaches us that boundaries aren't walls. They're lines drawn to protect what's sacred. Your peace, your clarity, your soul. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. But it also becomes shaped by the people we allow in without filter. So how do you respond? You don't explain your worth. You clarify your standards. You say, "Please call before visiting." Or, "I'm not comfortable discussing that topic." Simple, calm, direct, no apologies. And here's the key, you follow through. Because boundaries without consequences are just suggestions. If someone keeps crossing the line after you've made it clear, you don't owe them another explanation, you owe yourself action. Limit the time, shift the dynamic, and if needed, walk away entirely. That's not cold, that's clarity. That's not punishment, that's protection, because the moment you stop treating your boundaries as optional, you begin teaching others how to love you, not through guilt, not through obligation, but through deep and lasting respect. You were never created to live on other people's terms. You were meant to live on your own, with peace, with intention, and with grace. Part 3. Gaslighting. It doesn't start with a slap, it starts with a sentence. "I never said that." You're being dramatic. You always twist things. You walk away from the conversation confused, not because you lost an argument, but because you suddenly feel like you imagined it all, like reality just slipped through your hands. That is gaslighting, and it's not a misunderstanding. It's a strategy, a way of twisting clarity into confusion and making you doubt your own sanity. It sounds subtle at first, a skipped detail, a contradiction, a change in story. But over time, it doesn't just affect how you see them. It rewires how you see yourself. You begin second-guessing your memory. You start a sentence with, "Maybe I'm just being too sensitive," even when deep down, you know you're not. You just want to keep the peace. You want to believe this isn't abuse. But here's the truth. Gaslighting is a quiet form of domination. It doesn't want communication. It wants control. Psychologists say it creates a kind of internal erosion, not on your body, but on your brain. Your confidence, your instincts, your sense of safety, all slowly unravel, until one day you feel like a ghost in your own mind. Stoicism offers a powerful reminder here. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit." That doesn't mean the abuse is your fault. It means your power begins the moment you stop letting them define the rules of reality. So what do? You stop debating. Because gaslighters aren't looking for truth. They're looking for surrender. Instead, you observe. You write things down. You track what they said and how you felt. Not for revenge, for clarity. Talk to someone outside the dynamic. A therapist, a trusted friend, someone who sees you without distortion. Sometimes healing begins with one simple sentence. "No, you're not crazy, that really happened." And then, most importantly, you draw a line. Not a speech, not a threat. A boundary with real consequences. If the pattern continues, you don't explain. You step back, you detach, you reclaim your mind. Because gaslighting doesn't steal your power all at once. It takes it one small moment at a time until you forget who you are. But now you remember. You see it, you feel it, and you stop betraying your own perception just to keep someone else comfortable. That's not weakness. That's wisdom waking up. And when you trust your own mind again, no manipulator can ever own you. Part 4. Chronic dishonesty. It rarely starts with one giant lie. It begins with a skipped detail, a story that changes slightly, a promise that quietly disappears. And at first you give them the benefit of the doubt, but slowly you begin collecting red flags like souvenirs until you realize you've built a relationship on shifting sand. They say they lie to protect your feelings, but what they're really protecting is themselves, their convenience, their image, their control. Because telling the truth would require effort, accountability, or the risk of losing the version of themselves they want you to believe in. Dishonesty wears many masks. There's omission, what they choose not to say. There's minimization. It's not a big deal. There's deflection. Why are you always so paranoid? And there's betrayal disguised as kindness, saying all the right things while doing the wrong ones behind your back. But no matter how it's delivered, the result is always the same. You begin to doubt your memory. You start to mistrust your own intuition. And worst of all, you stop believing in your own judgment. That's not just emotional pain, it's neurological damage. Studies in behavioral psychology show that repeated exposure to deception weakens cognitive confidence. Your brain becomes unsure of what's real, and your body starts to live in a quiet state of alarm. You feel unsettled but can't explain why. You overanalyze conversations, replay small moments. Because deep down, you're trying to make sense of a reality built on contradictions. And slowly you forget what truth even feels like. Seneca once wrote, "Truth is the first lesson of friendship, because without truth, there is no relationship, only performance, only illusion." So what does Stoicism teach us to do in the face of lies? First, stop listening to words. Watch behavior. Because people lie with words, but truth always leaks through their actions. Second, stop trying to fix them. Their dishonesty is not a puzzle you are meant to solve. You don't need another conversation. You need a decision. Third, reclaim your clarity. Write down the inconsistencies. Anchor yourself back to what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. Let silence grow between you, not out of anger, but out of respect for your own peace. Because every time someone lies to you, what they're silently saying is, your trust is disposable, your clarity is negotiable, your peace is optional, and your response must be firm. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with finality. Not anymore. You owe no one your continued belief in what they've already broken. What you owe is to your own integrity, to protect it like something sacred. Because once clarity returns, so does your power. And when your eyes are open, no illusion can hold you. Part 5. Disrespect disguised as jokes. It starts with a laugh, maybe even yours. A joke aimed at your insecurities, but delivered with a smile. You tell yourself not to take it personally, but deep down, something tightens in your chest. Because that wasn't humor. That was a knife disguised as a punchline. And you felt it, even if no one else in the room did. Disrespect hidden in jokes is one of the most socially acceptable forms of emotional abuse. It hides behind timing, behind tone, behind the words, "I was just being honest." But honesty without kindness is cruelty. And laughter doesn't make it harmless, it makes it easier to deny. You laugh along to keep the peace. You smile to avoid being called sensitive. But with every laugh that costs you your dignity, you teach yourself that pain is easier to endure than conflict. I once heard a woman say, "It wasn't the insults that broke me. It was realizing I spent 20 years laughing at my own humiliation." Let that settle. Because that kind of betrayal doesn't come from enemies, it comes from people you love. Those who use jokes to dominate know exactly what they're doing. They study your soft spots. They aim carefully, consistently. And when you flinch, they mock your reaction instead of their own words. Don't be dramatic. Come on, it was just a joke. If you can't take a joke, maybe you're the problem. But if the only one laughing is the one holding the knife, is that really humor? No, that's power play in disguise. That's manipulation with a laugh track. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Let your words be few and well chosen, like a physician's knife, used to heal, not to wound." That's the Stoic model. Words are tools. They can cut or they can cure, and intention matters. Brutal honesty isn't a virtue, it's a mask for emotional laziness. Real honesty, the kind worth trusting, doesn't humiliate. It clarifies, it protects, even when it's uncomfortable. So what do you do when the joke cuts deeper than the surface? You stop laughing. You stop offering polite smiles as bandages for sharp words. You don't have to yell. You just say, "That felt disrespectful." Then you let the discomfort stay with them. With you, because you're not being uptight, you're being honest. And you're finally choosing dignity over false harmony. You do not owe anyone your tolerance for disrespect, not even your family. Especially not your family. If someone consistently hides poison in their humor, you don't have to sip it just to avoid awkwardness. You don't have to laugh to keep the peace, because there is no peace where respect is absent. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. It's about no longer shrinking just to make someone else comfortable in their cruelty. And when you stop allowing jokes that cut, you start healing the parts of you that forgot how to stand tall. You've just walked through 5 silent storms. Criticism that erodes you. Boundaries crossed in the name of closeness. Gaslighting that rewrites your truth. Lies that make you question your own mind. And jokes that wound you under the disguise of humor. None of these leave bruises. None of them show up in x-rays. But all of them leave damage. Invisible, lingering, and often dismissed, especially when it comes from the people you love the most. A partner who says "I love you" right before they make you feel small. A parent who calls it care while stepping over every boundary you've tried to hold. A friend who uses your silence as permission to keep hurting you. These aren't misunderstandings, these are patterns. And here's the hard truth. What you tolerate, you teach. Every time you swallow your voice in the name of peace, you show them your boundaries are optional. But they're not. Stoicism is not about enduring everything. It's not about becoming numb. It's not about staying silent just to appear strong. It's about seeing reality clearly and responding with wisdom and courage. Marcus Aurelius didn't tell us to pretend we're unaffected. He taught us to recognize what weakens the soul and to walk away from it with integrity. You get to choose who has access to your energy. You get to choose who sits at your table. And sometimes loving yourself means revoking access, even from those who share your blood. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You need truth, you need clarity, you need courage. So start with one boundary, one truth, one moment of honesty. Maybe it sounds like "I don't find that funny," or "That's not okay with me anymore." Maybe it's silence, the kind that protects, not punishes. Maybe it's walking away, not in anger, but in dignity. Whatever it is, let it be real, let it be rooted, let it be yours. Because healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it begins with the softest act of all, choosing not to betray yourself anymore. And in that space, you don't just survive, you rise. If this spoke to something inside you, leave a comment, not for likes, but to let someone else know they're not the only one. Your voice might be the one that gives someone else the courage to protect their own. And remember, this isn't about becoming harder. It's about becoming wiser. Because you were never born to be everyone's emotional punching bag. You were born to stand tall, to speak truth, and to draw the line with calm, with love, and with power.